Hello, everyone, and welcome. As we're continuing to await for additional students and families to trickle in, I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from today. Firstly, on behalf of our entire admissions team, I do want to extend another round of congratulations on your admission. We truly hope to welcome all of you onto campus this fall. So to introduce myself, my name is Eva Bori. I'm an admissions counselor facilitating this session in partnership with my colleague Julia Hall from the Office of Admissions. We'll both support with questions today. And then, of course, our panelists today are Karen Toole, Assistant Director of Academic Support, and On Track, and Judy Kopp, Associate Director in the Center for Disability Resources. So as you all may know, the Center for Disability Resources supports students and faculty here on campus by providing accommodations and really kind of eliminating learning barriers through creating an accessible and inclusive learning environment for our Orange community here at Syracuse University. Again, thank you for tuning in to just continue exploring the Center for Disability Resources. I'm going to lean on my CDR campus partner colleagues today, Karen and Judy, to provide today's overview. And please feel free to note any questions via the question and answer feature on Zoom. Julia and I will be sure to address them, and we'll provide some applicable links, website links as well, so you can continue exploring beyond today. Thank you again, Karen and Judy, for taking the time to connect with our admitted students. I will let you take the lead from here.
All right, great. Well, that was a great introduction. Thank you so much. My name is Judy Kopp. As Eva said, I am one of the associate directors in the Center for Disability Resources, and I'm with Karen Toole, who's the assistant director, and she heads up our academic support and On Track program at SU. And we're going to talk about, how to get accommodations, like what to expect, and just give you a little bit of information so you can move forward. And then also, I know there was tons of questions about academic support. Karen, want to go to the next slide?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, we want to talk a little bit about our mission. It's very important to us. The Center for Disability Resources, we advance disability as diversity, and we adopt an equity-minded approach. So we actively promote access, and that means that all students should have equal access and inclusion. And we think of it as a shared responsibility, meaning we work all the time with faculty and staff around campus to help them to understand what our mission is and to help them also promote access and inclusion. Next. So our approach to disability is what we call social justice. And so we have some core beliefs. And one of them is that access and inclusion are part of that. It's a matter of social justice. And we're looking to create accessible, inclusive environments. And like I said before, this is a shared responsibility. So it's everybody on campus. We educate campus partners, and we work closely with those partners, and we work with students. So disability coupled with a student's various intersecting identities are just a natural part of human variation, and it's an aspect of diversity. So we think of disability as part of the campus diversity, which we're very proud of. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk about next is really the transition to college. Like, what does it mean to transition from high school to college, and what to expect at Syracuse University? So that's what this section is going to be about. So I think what you need to do is anticipate differences in students' responsibilities, parents' roles and responsibilities, the different types of classrooms you'll be experiencing. The testing accommodations may feel very different from something you've been used to in the past. The interactions and the engagement that students have with their teachers or their faculty, professors, that's something that's very different than the high school environment. There's differences in the type of in-class work that you're going to be doing versus the expectations of out-of-class work. The level of academic support could feel different to students. And something that's really big to students is the schedule differences. It's no longer like an 8 or 9 a.m. to 2 or 3 p.m. Students have bigger breaks between classes sometimes. Sometimes they have days that are really long. Every day may be different. So it does take some getting used to, and students really take the charge on managing their time, and that's a big difference. Next, please. So one thing that I think a lot of students want to do is understand how to connect with CDR. So the first thing that a student does is they register with our office, and this registration happens through our website. Our website has our registration page. It's really clearly delineated for students so they can see this. And then once a student registers, the student will set up a meeting with their CDR access coordinator. They're assigned a CDR access coordinator for the welcome meeting. And this generally happens, we like to meet with students during the summer before they arrive on campus, so they have that initial meeting already taken care of, if possible. Sometimes students are so busy in the summer, they want to wait until they arrive on campus to meet. That's okay too. But the first thing to do is register, and then we will help you to set up that meeting with the access coordinator. The students engage in what we call the interactive process, and this results in the access plan that the student, and it's very student driven. Students learn how to request accommodations, and they also learn what the additional resources are through CDR and some other resources, throughout campus. So all students are encouraged to communicate with their instructors and professors and other campus stakeholders just to continue this interactive process and to make sure their plans and the support that they have in place is there when they need it. So, and also just accessing the support of the CDR coordinators also when needed. That's also something that we want students to connect with. Next, Karen. So let me tell you a little bit about the interactive process. This really is the welcome meeting that we set up with students. It's usually this first meeting that we have, and students will work with an assigned access coordinator. Once they register, they get a letter telling them who their access coordinator is through the Center for Disability Resources. And together, the student and the coordinator have what we call the welcome meeting, and they discuss the different types of accommodations, modifications, those things that they may need to make sure they have access to their academics and in some other areas too at SU. And so this conversation, as well as future conversations, that's the crux of your access plan. The structure of the conversation follows the questions that you're going to see on the registration form. And the student will have the opportunity to expand on their strengths and then just other areas that are challenges or places that they've had support or they anticipate needing support. So the welcome meeting begins the interactive process and your ongoing relationship with CDR. Next, please. So creating an access plan. So when we say access plan, students might be thinking, well, when I was in high school, I had a 504 plan or I had an IEP. Maybe you didn't have either. That's okay. But you might think, well, now going into college, I'm going to need some accommodations. That's going to be the access plan. So the student's experience is a critical component to creating this. So thinking about what you had in the past and what you think is going to be necessary at the college level and some things that may not be. And I can give you some examples of that. Like maybe in high school, you had an accommodation of assigned seating or something like that. And when you get to college, you may not want that because you're going to be able to select the seat that's going to suit you best, in each class, and you really don't want the professor involved in that decision. And every student is different. There might be situations where a student does know that they have to sit in a certain place and they want to make sure it's reserved for them. So that's just one example. The student and the access coordinator will create an accommodation letter during the welcome meeting. And the accommodation letter will serve as the communication tool to the instructors. And CDR will send this letter directly to the faculty. We use an online system. Everyone will get used to it. Students will go to the student disability portal once they're registered, and their professors go to the faculty disability portal. And everything is located on MySlice, which you might already be accustomed to. You might have seen some things on MySlice. If not, you'll get to know what that is. So that's where the communication tool to the instructors gets sent, and I'll talk about some other tools in the in the upcoming slides. The accommodation letter is renewed online through this portal by the student every semester. And then it's also sent to their new instructors every semester once they renew. It's always student initiated. We do not send letters to instructors unless the student initiates the process, because there might be a semester where the students don't want the letter sent. There might be some examples of that. So it's always student initiated. Next slide, please. How your experience shapes your access plan. Your experience, your self-knowledge is discussed in the welcome meeting, and college level accommodations are reviewed together in the conversation. And so students and access coordinators create the accommodation letter based on this conversation, and they will talk about effective means to address any access needs. The access coordinator and student talk about what worked well in high school and what will be needed at the college level. And the conversation will cover how college level accommodations sometimes differ from high school accommodations, and when needed, alternative means of ensuring access are explored. So like some examples I might give you is like, one of the things I think that we do, that we have a lot of different options for at Syracuse University is note-taking accommodations. When we talk to students, they might not have had note-taking accommodations in high school. Perhaps they didn't take that many notes, or their teachers maybe shared notes, or they did maybe a Google Doc for everyone to share. Now students might want to be more independent with their note taking, and we have a lot of options, things from like audio recording or using certain types of technologies, or we have a lot of different apps that students can use for note taking, and we explore things like that with a student. That might be something really different than what you've experienced in high school. Maybe not. We meet with a lot of students that have come in and they've had some great tools they used in high school, and they want to continue to use them, and that's great too. Next slide, please. So your coordinators are your advocate for access. Your access coordinator's role is to support and to guide you in ensuring you have equal access to your education. Access coordinators help students to find ways to communicate with instructors, advisors, any type of support services on campus. Self-advocacy is a skill that all college students learn to develop, and like counselors are an excellent resource to help with this. Your access coordinator is a good resource for this. We understand that self-advocacy and talking about the accommodations you may need can be difficult conversations. So one of the things that we definitely support our students with is helping students to approach instructors to talk about accommodations. And coordinators can discuss and practice with you some strategies to initiate, engage. If you're writing an email and you want assistance with that, and you want some kind of direction, Access Coordinator is a really good resource for you with that. Next slide, please. So some student responsibilities that you have when it comes to accommodations is making sure that you give timely notice of need, meaning like registering with CDR and having accommodations in place in advance instead of last minute. Providing documentation. We can talk about documentation. I usually get a lot of questions about documentation, but just ensuring that CDR has everything we need in order to just engage in that interactive process. And then we do ask you to engage in that process. Students, they're expected to meet with us and talk with us, share what their experiences and needs are, and also that you have to engage with faculty and staff as appropriate. Sometimes it's important to talk to a professor. So for instance, let's say you're in a class and the professor announces that it's going to be an online exam, and you have extra time. It's never a bad idea just to email the professor or speak to the professor and say, I just want to remind you, I have an accommodation for the extra time, and I want to make sure that that extra time gets added to my test. Thank you very much. So just that small bit of engagement with the teacher, even though they've been provided your letter, and even though it's their responsibility to provide that extra time, just that engagement is a part of a natural process. And then also signing up, and we use, like I said, our online system, which is called Accommodate, and notify faculty of test accommodation requests. So we have a policy in our office that when students want to take an exam in our test center, that they have to make an appointment at least 48 hours in advance. So there can't be any last minute signups. And we help students and walk you through that process and help you with that. So we really do try to make sure that students remember to do what they need to do, and we're here to help. Um, Timely notification of concerns regarding the provision and quality of accommodations to CDR. So that just means that if you have an accommodation and something isn't going well, speaking up and letting us know, letting CDR know, letting your access coordinator know, letting the professor know. Um, just that communication piece is important. That's part of your responsibility. It's also it's a shared responsibility in that we have to ensure things are in place and working well for you, but we have to know when they're not working well because we won't be able to fix something if we don't know something's not working. Next slide, please. I just want to talk about the different resources too that we have, like the resources that we have through the portal, which is our online system, and the access coordinator, what to kind of expect from both. So through our portal and our online system, which we call Accommodate, students have access to their accommodation letters. This is where they can renew accommodation letters when they need to with upcoming semesters. And this is where students can request supplemental accommodations. So let's say you have a couple of accommodations and you think of one more thing that you really think would be very useful. You realize it's really lacking and you want to request it. You can put that request right in through the system and then make an appointment with your coordinator. And this is also where you sign up for exams. So a lot of things are right at your fingertips, which is really neat. A lot of students really like that because everything is in that portal. It's kind of a one-stop shopping thing. And then the other thing too, technology is great. People are great too. So having an access coordinator there that's helping you to develop that plan, that person who's going to be the liaison between you and faculty, somebody that's going to help you with your advocacy, someone who can help you understand the transition. Also, your access coordinator can mentor students with conversations with faculty. They can also help with any referrals. So it's great to have both. It's great to have the technology that's right there all the time, and then it's also great to have a person. And we know how important it is to have a person you can go to. So we also always have an access coordinator who's on call. So we have an on-call person. Students can either stop in or email, and that person is always available to, like during the 9 to 5 day. I'm not talking about 24/7, but that person's always there to meet with somebody, like if you have a last minute question or need. And it may not be the access coordinator you were assigned to, but it's always somebody there to help you. Next slide. So some additional resources and referrals that the access coordinators do is we refer to academic support, which Karen is going to talk about, and she'll talk about tutoring voucher codes, and she'll talk about like how we help you to connect with that, what we have in our office, and what we do like outside our office. We also have some assistive technology training and loan programs should you need a particular device and you want to try something out. We have accessible transportation. So anybody with any kind of mobility needs, we work a lot with students that it might even be temporary. We've had students that, have had an injury and it may not be long term, but they might need some transportation and they're really worried about it. So we're here to help with that too and help you navigate that. And then also our office has an International Honor Society that students can join. And it's not a lot of responsibility at all, but it's just a great resume builder to be part of. We also have a peer mentoring program, and we also have a program called Orange Explorers. I think Karen's going to get into that a little bit more too. But we've got a lot of resources within our office. Next slide, please. And that's on to Karen.
Thanks, Judy, for all of that. So, as they mentioned, my name's Karen Toole. I oversee the academic support unit and the On Track at SU program, and I'll cover both of those today. So, in academic support, these are kind of some of the three main areas that we do. The biggest one is learning strategist support. And so students, and we prioritize towards first year students. They can get weekly scheduled appointments with a learning strategist, focus on time management, organizational skills, study strategies, connecting to campus resources. And the key with this is to note that availability, unfortunately, is limited. And so I'll give contact information in a little bit, but the student, once they're registered with the Center for Disability Resources, as Judy mentioned, over the summer, they can email our CDRAS email, which I'll provide, and request to meet with a learning strategist. As I said, it's limited. It's a first come, first served basis. So we do keep a running list of students. And then about the week before classes start, we'll email those students and start to set up appointments. If a student doesn't get in right away, they eventually will, because this isn't a full semester or full year commitment. We have students that do drop out of it, and then we'll just continue to work off that wait list. The other thing we have is Orange Explorers, and this is really dedicated more to that social piece. This program helps students build social connections and explore a campus at their own pace. So we hire either a senior or a grad student to work in this role. They meet with each student to learn about their interests and set personal goals together. And then the navigator can also accompany the student to campus events or explore new areas of campus side by side. Students are welcome to engage as much or as little as they like. There's no set commitment required. So we have students that might only meet with them a couple times to get a feel for things. We have students that meet with the student navigator all year and they attend events together. And the idea is, again, to build those connections, allow them to explore campus, to join clubs or go to meetings. And it can be intimidated for anybody when you're trying to figure that out by yourself. And then we also have peer mentoring, and this is a much more kind of looser, flexible. Basically, it's a peer who's lived the experience and can offer something unique, different than maybe our staff can. And so we pair someone, any student that's interested, with an upperclassman who mentors them and again, helps them navigate campus resources, form meaningful connections, better understand the realities of transitioning to college life. And this is, simpler with maybe meeting up for a cup of coffee or going to have lunch, unlike Orange Explorers, where they're meeting in the office and really digging into things. But again, just a couple options for students that really want some support connecting socially on campus. The other piece we have, as Judy mentioned, within academic support is tutoring through the Center for Learning and Student Success. CLASS is the acronym. Some of you may have already heard about it. This is the university-wide tutoring center. They have peer tutors. They do one-on-one tutoring, and they also have group tutoring sessions. And right now, the one-on-one tutoring sessions cost $25 an hour. And so what we do is we'll provide up to $200 per semester in voucher codes. So right now that would be 8 free tutoring sessions with a one-on-one tutor. And that's for every semester for their entire college career. Obviously, again, they need to be registered with our Center for Disability Resource Office, but they can simply email that CDRAS email and ask for voucher codes each semester. And it is a great resource for any student with CDR to utilize. So as I mentioned, if a student would like to work with a learning strategist, there's the email, cdras@syr.edu over the summer. Again, first come, first serve. And we do fill up about early September. So as far as when the learning strategists fill up, I would say though, if this is something that's really, really important to you, you should be emailing that email by mid to end of July, just because that list grows, and by middle of August, that's where we've maxed out. Let's see, and then my email is at the bottom, kmtoole@syr.edu. Any questions on any of what I just talked about? Because we are, I'm moving through it pretty quickly, but any questions at all, that's my email, and I can talk to anybody individually or just explain more about what I just discussed. So, on to On Track at SU. This is a fee-based program, so there is a cost for this. This program is designed to engage first-year students in a collaborative coaching model by addressing both academic and social emotional readiness. We support students with their entire transition. So they'll meet with a trained ADHD LD coach twice a week, scheduled meetings, and then in addition, there'll be some check-ins through text or email that the student and coach decide each week on what's going on. How this differs from that learning strategist academic support is, one, there's more touch points, twice a week appointments, check-ins through email or text. Our learning strategists do have their bachelor's degrees. However, our coaches have their master's degree and they go through training in coaching and working with students with disabilities. And On Track at SU is designed to support the student with that entire transition. So whereas the learning strategist academic support is obviously academic related, On Track at SU and the coaches work with students in every facet. So it could be helping with that social piece. It could be advocating to the professor. Maybe they're having a roommate situation and they're trying to figure out how to have that conversation with their roommate if they're being annoying. It really is anything and everything that the student wants to talk about and needs support in. The only thing is we're not mental health counselors. And that's the case where when it does get into that area, we definitely connect them to the Barnes Center, or that might be where we get the parents or somebody else involved to make sure we're supporting the student. Any student in the program the first year has the option to continue in the program for a second year. We scale back to once a week appointments. So we're trying to keep that support in place, but at the same time, we're building independence and behaviors in that first year that they could take with them in the second year. So here are some areas of focus: time management, organizational skills, self-advocacy, developing independence, self-awareness, building social connections, decision-making, connecting to campus resources. And so in thinking about that self-awareness piece and decision-making, again, that's where the level of support increases from other areas. We're working with students on being accountable to themselves, talking through what their choices are. They're really in the driver's seat, reflecting on what went well and what didn't. So they are self-aware on maybe what those decisions were, really developing independence. And so again, of course, there's that academic piece, but there's a lot more that goes into it with the On Track program. So the program fee, it's $3,200 per semester for twice a week, $1,650 for the one time a week appointments. We do have financial aid support. So students who do complete a CSS profile and FAFSA and demonstrate a financial aid will have their On Track program costs covered by a Syracuse University grant. The On Track staff does not evaluate this. They don't know any of the financial information. I simply email the student's name and student ID number to my contact at financial aid, and they determine that situation. The university itself doesn't actually fund the on-track program. The fees that you see there are what keep the program afloat. So that's why there are fees for this program. And right now we have 102 students total, 53 first-year students, and 49 second-year students. So for those interested in the application acceptance process for OnTrack, you do have to apply. You have to attend an information session. So you can do that by emailing me. And again, I'll have emails up in a minute. And to learn more about the program, they have to complete and email the application with documentation. And then one of the coaches will do an interview. And this is really just more of a conversation, making sure the student understands the program and that they want to do it. It's really important that the student is engaged in the process. And then, of course, we would send through email their decision as far as if they can participate in the program. So again, Judy and I both kind of blew through that. There's a lot of information there for everybody, and so we did cover a lot. So here on the screen are the emails. There's Judy's email, anything on accommodations or CDR related. You can reach out to her. OnTrack at SU, my email, Karen Toole. You see both of those on the screen. I monitor the OnTrack at SU email. I'm the only one that looks at it. So whether you do that one or Karen Toole, it's coming right to me either way. And then the academic support. If you want to meet with that learning strategist, and they're unlike OnTrack, there is no cost for that. Or you're interested in learning about Orange Explorers or any of the voucher tutoring, that's your email right there, cdras@syr.edu. Megan's our person that monitors that. She's also our front desk person. And so she'll get your name on the list and your information to reach out to meet with the learning strategist. So that concludes Judy and I's presentation. I think they'll probably turn it over now for any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen and Judy. We so appreciate your overview this evening. I will say that we do have quite a few questions. So if you don't mind sticking around just to address some of these topics, I will go in order that students and families have posted. So to begin with, would parents be able to take part in the access plan, especially for the first semester, if the student allows?
I'll answer that question. So what we usually do, like a lot of times parents want to be a part of the welcome meeting. And so what we usually do is we usually start the meeting with the student and have it like one-on-one with the access coordinator and the student. And then we always reserve time for the parent to come in. And then oftentimes what we do is we review what was discussed and, also, continue on with that meeting with the parents' input as well. So that's usually how we do that. And we do communicate with students. Sometimes like if we have if we're at a really busy time and parents have questions, we'll ask the parents to say we might say to the parents, please have your student drop in to our drop-in advisor right now and bring it up. And a lot of times what students will also want to do is if they want mom or dad or someone to be part of that meeting, they'll ask if they can either have them on their phone with them or do a FaceTime with them. And so we absolutely want to take input from parents.
Perfect.
But we
Thank you
do
so
want
much.
students to learn to be in the driver's seat, as Karen said.
Exactly. Thank you. I think hopefully that was helpful for the student asking the question. And maybe these are questions that can apply to families and many students on this call. So hopefully their responses are helping all of you. Second question, can a student decide once classes start or the semester starts if they need accommodations? Maybe they're coming in thinking they don't. Can they change their mind? And what's the protocol around that?
Absolutely. We do not have any deadlines. So we have students that register with our office throughout the semester. So we never say like, oh, you can't do that. You can do that if you can always register and even have a meeting with an access coordinator and then not even use the accommodations. You can always use the accommodations as you see fit. So it might even be a good plan to go ahead and register, meet with an access coordinator, see what you think, use the accommodations if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. So it's completely up that way. But at least they're available then, you know, if you should want to use accommodations, or you might be using accommodations with some classes and not others.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. So this is a little bit different, but I think can apply to or other students that may not be thinking about these areas. Is the Center for Disability Resources the teams that would be able to help with air conditioning or air purifiers in the dorm for environmental allergies?
Hmm. Yep. Um, so most of the residence halls are not air conditioned. Most of them are not. So when a student needs it for a medical condition, they can make that request through CDR. Air purifiers, they don't have to be they don't have to be approved. A student can just bring an air purifier.
Perfect. And then related to that, and this it may also trickle into housing, but in addition to academic or learning accommodations, what's the process to request or explore living arrangement accommodations?
So if a student has a need for a particular housing accommodation, they indicate that when they register. And one thing that we always recommend is make sure that stands out because the deadline to make a housing request, because housing is a limited resource, obviously, and they're trying to place students in the appropriate housing placements. So we have a June 1st deadline for housing accommodations for the incoming students. So make sure that you register early and make it clear that it's a housing accommodation. And then you would have like an early meeting with an access coordinator just to discuss that request.
Perfect, thank you. And I know there are quite a few questions regarding housing and housing accommodations through this thematic session, and we would encourage you to either tune in to some of our virtual housing sessions happening this month as well. We have those to support students that have housing questions and concerns, whether it's accommodations or beyond, and also just contacting the Office of Housing, Living Learning Communities as well. They are able to also continue this conversation with students and families when it comes to housing accommodations. So next question, how much time do you recommend before the academic year starts? Should students be reaching out to talk about accommodations or requesting them?
We're getting a lot of registrations from students right now, and students are, once they register, they're receiving a letter from our office saying, thank you for your registration. You'll be hearing from CDR in the upcoming weeks with your access coordinator. And so students can begin right now, and then we'll start having meetings with students beginning in June. We know that a lot of students are still quite busy in June with high school and graduation and that kind of thing. So throughout the summer, we start scheduling meetings. But they
Perfect.
can start to register anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Is there any extra support for students with food allergies besides working with the nutritionists in the dining centers? Do they have additional access to kitchens, cooking tools, and is that something that CDR would be able to support with?
Well, that's kind of one of the housing questions. And as it was mentioned, there are dietitians that work at the university. There's a couple of dietitians that work in the Barn Center, and then we also work with another dietitian that works really closely with the dining hall managers, and they can help students with both planning for meals and knowing where certain types of things are that they might need, how to avoid certain things. All of our dining halls are nut free. So nuts shouldn't be, if the allergy happens to be nuts, it shouldn't be a problem. We have gluten-free lines as well in every dining hall. So we have a lot of students that are gluten-free as well. But yeah, that's the way we do it. There's not many kitchens in the first year residence halls. I think there might be a few halls that might have like a little kitchenette that's shared, but a lot of times students with allergies are worried about cross-contamination, and that doesn't really fit the bill. So I think the best strategy is to use the dietitians and the dining hall managers that are really knowledgeable about different, allergens and things.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's wonderful context for the students. And yes, please do contact the Office of Housing as well. They are able to provide a lot of support in terms of accommodations on that end. So, Karen, a couple questions regarding OnTrack. In terms of determining eligibility, how does OnTrack, is it based on severity of need? Who gets to participate, and how does that selection process work?
Yeah, it's similar to academic support where for the most part it is a first come first served basis. And again, unfortunately we have limited resources, so on track program does fill up as well and students go on a wait list and there is a little bit of shifting in that where students can join midway through the academic year. So one of the things we look at, obviously they need to be registered with our office and have documentation. Um, the biggest piece to acceptance is the student's willingness to engage. And so you're asking a student to come in twice a week for the entire academic year and not just show up, but also be engaged, come ready to have conversation, willing to share and communicate. Honesty is crucial with these programs and with CDR because we don't have access to grades. We don't email on the student's behalf to the professor. So when we do what we call that interview, it's really a conversation about does the student want to do the program? Sometimes they don't so much, but maybe other people in their life want them to. So it's kind of vetting that out. Make sure the student knows what they're getting into when they're signing up for the program. And so that's basically it. If the student shows lack of interest or doesn't seem to want to do it, then we would not invite them into the program.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. So is OnTrack only available for the first 2 years of attendance at Syracuse? And if a student applied and had an interview, when would they find out their admission status?
As far as this, yes, ideally it's 2 years and that's it. They fly off on their own and they've learned behaviors and skills they can take with them. Um, However, we're not in a perfect world by any means, and so there are on occasion a handful of students that will stay in the program the third year. What happens is if the student is expressing the need, and that's where I'll work with the coach to get their take on it. There's a difference between liking and wanting to meet with this person and still needing it. And so there are a handful of students every year that do stay a third year, but that is a case by case um, basis. And then as far as acceptance goes, within a couple weeks after the interview, so the info session's done, the application's received, the interview conversation, and then within a couple weeks of that happening, we'll send an email out to the student inviting them into the program. And that's going to come from whoever did the interview. And so we meet as a group and talk through the students just to make sure they're a good fit. So just allowing us time to do that.
Perfect. Thank you again, Karen. So the next question we have is, are parents and supporters able to get an update from the accommodation support team if students allow access to that information?
Is that a question about accommodations or is it about academic support?
I think if maybe we can address both, it might be a little unclear, but I think maybe for all of the families tuning in, to sort of differentiate between how are the parents able to get involved in this process versus the students, and can it be sort of a reciprocal process of the parents being notified as well as the students?
Well, I can speak from, say perhaps like utilization of accommodations and, contact with the office. What we generally tend to do is we ask the students to take the lead on that and share that kind of information with their parents. When parents feel like they need to speak to somebody in CDR and talk about the accommodations or the plans, we're available to talk. But in terms of like kind of checking in, we encourage the students to be sharing that type of information. So, for instance, if a parent wanted to know, are you coming to CDR and taking your tests in the exam center and utilizing your extended time? Instead of contacting the access coordinator or somebody in our office, we would want them to, have an honest conversation with their student about that. But if there's like a concern, like, you know, we're we're really concerned because of X, Y, or Z, and we wanted to talk to somebody, we try to make ourselves available. We do, we follow FERPA, so we would have a release from the student to talk to a parent in advance. And if we don't have it, then we get that first. And we're always available to answer general questions too. So if a parent's like, well, I don't think I was told I should defer everything to my student, I shouldn't ask questions. That's not true. They can always call and ask general questions, and we're always happy to help with that.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying, Judy. So back to On Track. Can you start the On Track program at SU mid-semester or at any point in the semester, or do you have to decide at the beginning of the semester?
You would have to decide at the beginning of the semester. So where this initial phase of these brand new students coming in will, when we send acceptance and invite somebody in the program, there is a deadline they have to respond by. Where that can change a little is if, we always have a wait list every year for On Track, and that will not change this year. If it gets to the point where it's maybe November-ish or October and a spot opens up, we would then go to the wait list and invite that person in, even though it is mid-semester. Likewise, between fall and spring semesters, we do get some change and shifting, and then we would again work down that wait list and invite somebody in. So that's the only time they might join mid-semester or mid-academic year, is if they've gotten onto the wait list. The initial invitation, they would have to decide.
Perfect. Thank you. And then in terms of costs, we had a few questions just in regards to tutoring, subject areas on campus, support fees. So we had given students some information about class on campus, one of our other campus partners, but our tutoring, so the question was, are tutoring fees covered if on the On Track program, if they go beyond $200?
No, no, that wouldn't entail any additional voucher codes. That's across the board for any CDR student, regardless if they're on track.
Perfect. Thank you. And general question here, what documentation is required for access to these services? And I know you had both spoken about that a bit, and there is a lot of resources on our website, but just maybe some more general info on documentation that students should
Mhm.
anticipate submitting.
Sure, I can answer that question. So what we recommend is submitting any most recent documentation that you may have. So if you have a 504 or an IEP in your school that's current, or that, the most recent one, that's great. Kind of like a really good resource for us. And it really, regardless of the age of the report, is like a psychoeducational testing report that's been done, or a neuropsych exam. A lot of times we have a provider verification form that we send out to everybody. So for instance, if you're like, oh gosh, I don't have any of those things, we have a provider verification form. So that that works really well when a student is working with a professional that can fill out that form and speak to the student's, accommodation usage or need. So we have a lot of different formats of this, but again, I think the neuropsych or psychoeducational report is gives us so much information, and we really do like to get those. And so sometimes like a student may have had one that was quite a while ago. They might have even been in like in eighth grade or something, but still those things are very stable across time, and so we like to take a look at those if you have it. So I just say the more is better when you have it, and when you don't have if you don't have much but you need to register, then our provider verification form can be really handy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Judy. So shifting gears a bit, in terms of mental health counseling or psychiatrists on campus who can prescribe medication for anxiety, ADHD medications, maybe just some brief context on that end.
Sure. The Barnes Center has a fully staffed counseling center. They also have, for medication management, it can be, I understand it can be a little bit tougher. They have nurse practitioners that do prescribe, but it might be tough to kind of get in with the nurse practitioner. So I would, if you're thinking of utilizing the campus resources for prescription services or like ongoing support, I would contact the Barnes Center. And I do know like their counseling center, they do a lot of really, really excellent group count. They have a lot of different groups that they utilize. And then they also have one-on-one individualized counseling. They tend to limit that to like shorter term counseling. Like oftentimes it's like a limit of maybe 8 sessions. I'm not from the center, so that may not be completely accurate. But if that's something that a student is really used to having, and if there's some way, we have a lot of students that continue on with their therapists that they have from home when possible. Some can't do it because just different state regulations.
Perfect. Thank you again, Judy. So we have a student that has submitted an email with their application. Will I hear back from you, or will I need to follow the process and start with an interview?
Is that for on track? I
So I
assume.
don't have that answer,
I,
but
I didn't know.
one of you might have received an email from one of our attendees this evening.
Um, yeah, I mean, if it's me, what I do is I look at the who sent the email. We did have some on track information webinars over the last few months. I'll see if they attended that. If not, then the first step will be reaching out to set up an information session. So that would be one-on-one with one of the coaches. And then once that's done, they could quickly set up the interview because the application's already done. And so the process, that whole process, and then the interview, setting that up. I mean, it does take a few weeks just with schedules and setting it up. If there's ever anybody that wants to push that timeline up, I know especially with some people want to know if they're going to be part of the on track program before they decide to come to Syracuse. By all means, email me and let me know that, and we can, move that up sooner. Um, yeah. And they could always, like I said, email or call if they want to get into more specifics of the timeline.
Yeah,
Perfect.
same.
Thank you.
If the question has to do with meeting with an access coordinator or meeting with one of us, then generally, like if they want to meet, especially if they've got something that needs to be addressed immediately, then I would either ask them for like a specific type of documentation to help get that meeting started, and we could set the meeting up just through email if they're not set up with the portal yet. So just email, ask directly, and we'll get it set up. And they can always call our office as well.
Perfect. Thank you both again.
Mhm.
We do have a question regarding medical conditions that could impact a student's school attendance and ability to complete schoolwork on time or at different times during the semester. So if
Mhm.
there's any context there, I know we talked about this a little bit, but for a student, or this could be a parent that's advocating on behalf of the student, any context there regarding a medical condition.
Yeah, and so that would be a situation in which that a request for an accommodation, whether it's for attendance flexibility or assignment flexibility, deadline flexibility, that would be part of that interactive process, and discuss like how to navigate that, and we work through that with the student.
Yeah.
And then when needed, then that's another area in which we assist students with the faculty when needed.
Perfect.
So if it's an accommodation that it it's going to be a little more involved, then we make a written agreement with the professors.
Wonderful. Thank you, Judy. A question about exam centers. So the student's just asking for a bit more explanation on exam centers on campus.
We have one exam center, and it's the CDR Exam Center, and it's exclusively for students registered with CDR. And that location is in very close. We're located in 804 University Ave. We're across from Orange Hall, and then our exam center is in 111 Waverly, which is a building that's actually attached to our building, and that's where students can go to take their exams in a smaller room and with extended time, and it's a very quiet space. And they make an appointment to go and take their exams in that exam center. But there's just one, unlike like the libraries where we've got several choices. We've just got the one center. And
Perfect. Thank you, Judy.
we also serve students from ESF as well, SUNY ESF.
Perfect.
hmm
Do on-track students get to register for classes prior to other students?
No, they do not. So there's no difference there, but I will let Judy talk about that piece of registration. But on track, there's no differentiation.
hmm Priority registration is granted to students. Again, they go through the interactive process to determine what's necessary. And priority registration is granted when a student has a very highly specific need for a particular schedule, where they may need breaks between classes. They need their schedule to be set up a certain way. And so we're very tuned into when it's needed, and it's not something that's provided to all students with that are registered with CDR. In fact, a very, very small fraction of our students have priority registration.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And in terms of platforms or portals for posting assignments and exams, I know we talk about Blackboard in some of our other sessions. Are there any other portals that students need to become aware of or familiar with in advance in relation to accommodations?
In relation to accommodations, I think what they'll become familiar with is the student disability portal through MySlice. Students also are typically really familiar with Blackboard. That's kind of the number one platform that professors use for classroom information. Karen might know more platforms, but I don't know if learning them in advance is going to be any advantage.
Yeah, I will say I think it would be difficult to learn in advance because you need access to them through a class. But I will say professors most use Blackboard, but there are other professors, mostly for homeworks and assignments, that use, like math uses WebWorks. You have Packback for psychology classes. You have My Homeworks Lab. You have iLearn. So there are a lot of platforms out there that some professors like to use. But again, that's you would gain access at the start of the class. In the syllabus, they would explain how to gain access. And it is, I will say that is a little frustrating because we work with students with executive functioning. So, but that's a case where you would work with your professor if you want to go through any training on that.
Perfect. Thank you both. And then the last question that we have is about a BCAP, BCAP. Can that be used to receive accommodations? So
What
the
does it
student,
stand for?
yeah, so I just
BPC.
have the acronym. The student says, I have a BCAP. Can that be used to help get my accommodations? But
I'm not familiar with it. If I saw it, I might be able to know. But students are able to really upload any information that they want. And if we were to need more, we always send the student like the provider verification form as well if we need more. So, but
perfect.
for instance, like we'll get info from, like, say a student is a veteran. We might get info from the VA or something. So we take all kinds of documentation. We're not limited to a certain type. But what we're really looking for is we're looking for information that will help us to build that accommodation plan.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. That was the end of our questions. So thank you again to Judy and Karen for tuning in today just to give us some more context and an overview of the Center for Disability Resources on campus. Thank you to all of our admitted students and families that tuned in today. Congratulations to all of you again. I'm sure you're hearing that in email, in our student receptions on campus, in other thematic virtual sessions. And as a reminder for all of you, the admissions acceptance form is due by May 1, so you still have a few more weeks to continue exploring with the applicable tuition and housing payments to secure your seat for fall of 2026. And if there are additional arising questions beyond tonight, please, of course, feel free to get in touch with the Center for Disability Resources. Please stay connected with our Office of Admissions. You can reach us at any time throughout the week at orange@syr.edu or 315-443-3611. We are always happy to help and available to help. So thank you all again, and go Orange.